Christian, what do you guys think about the Big 12 meeting with presidents and ADs about Gonzaga? We brought that up as part of the itinerary or the agenda with Dennis Dodd and his story about Gonzaga, plus also still trying to find things out when it comes to whatever is the future when it comes to UT and Oklahoma. That's what they're meeting for. They're up in Dallas and Fort Worth. And I don't know. I mean, your Mark's trying to push the envelope and be different, be unique. And what are your thoughts about a team coming in? It would have to be for basketball only. They don't play football, but it would have to be, you would think, for men's basketball only.
Yeah, for men's basketball only. Look, it's already a great conference, and it's about to get better adding Houston into it. Cincinnati's got a pretty good basketball history. UCF and BYU are less known for that, but even still, like right now, bringing Houston into the league, when you're losing two good teams in Texas and OU, who are both really good and have really good coaches right now in Porter Moser and Rodney Terry, yeah, you're gonna lose some of that juice basketball wise. So adding in Houston and Gonzaga to replace them, to me, is a great idea. I think it's more important, which also makes it a good deal to me for the Big 12, but it's way more important for Gonzaga than it is the Big 12 to me, because Gonzaga has been in the final a few times. They've been in the Final Four a bunch. They have not crossed over that hump, and lately it appears that their conference isn't doing them any favors, and that they rolled through a couple years without getting challenged, and then the minute they did, they weren't ready for it. And because they hadn't played, even though they had good wins in the non-conference, they hadn't played that consistently, so they got a little worn out. So I do think that with a coach like Mark Few, who is fantastic and probably top 3 in the country as far as it goes, coming into the league, that'd be great. I'm sure there'd be a little bit of struggle, but they could probably step in and compete right away.
You think about, Craig, some of the other mid-majors, some have survived going into bigger conferences, some have not. For example, Xavier, fine. Villanova, they were already a part of the greatness of the Big East. And then there's some other schools, Wichita State, Memphis, and a couple of others. Creighton's fine. Some have and some haven't. I would think Gonzaga would be fine.
I mean, you would think, but I don't know that there's any really guarantee. And, does that stay the same once the coaching changes? I mean, is this just, the magic of the Gonzaga brand that they're forever going to be great at basketball no matter what? And if they're not very good, how appealing is that? How appealing is that trip to the West Coast to go play Gonzaga in basketball if they're just another middle-of-the-road team or slightly above-average team in a league full of above-average teams? That would be my concern, and why you need to think about it more than just like in the immediate of like right now, yeah, hey, that's great. It's like if the NFC are like, hey, can we go get the Chiefs and throw them in our, to have the best conference possible? Like, that'd be great. And not saying that Gonzaga's the Chiefs, but you know what I mean. Like, go get some high-level team and just add them. Yeah, on paper it looks great, but there's also 5-10 years down the line, and I don't think Brett Yormark's got a 20-year plan, because I don't think any of us are stupid enough to believe that everything's going to be the same that long. But, I mean, it's definitely an interesting headline. It's an interesting thought. I don't know how many people put 2 and 2 together when they're talking about it, when they think of like, oh, Gonzaga joining the Big 12, and that it would offset somewhat the losses of Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, you mentioned it, but I think when it's mentioned, you almost forget that Oklahoma and Texas are also leaving as well. And so, yeah, to replace some of that firepower, name-wise, basketball-wise, they would certainly foot the bill. I don't think the travel is probably as big of a deal as we make it out to be, because in basketball, I think you're traveling pretty good a lot of the time anyways. Obviously you wouldn't want to have to be West Virginia on a Monday night going all the way out to play the Zags, but maybe that's high profile enough that it's like it's worth the trip, because
they would probably match them up with a 2-game stretch where they're on the road and then they come back for home.
I mean, probably, but I'm just going through the different issues that you probably encounter. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be like the reason you don't do it, but I mean, looking at why it makes sense or why it doesn't, I mean, yeah, you have to at least look at the travel piece, because they're out there by themselves, although now the Big 12 has expanded, so they have teams that make more sense to make those trips. But, yeah, I find it interesting. I'm not like a hard yes or a hard no on it, though. Like, if it doesn't happen, I won't bat an eye. If it does happen, I'll be open-minded and probably love it at first and just be ready to see how it goes. But it's not a scratch that, or it's not an itch that I feel has to be scratched. It's a luxury, if anything.
Your Mark has said that they want to take the Big 12 in basketball, go international. Now, that's not international. That's just stretching it out to another part of the country. You had mentioned would anyone want to be there if there's a coaching change? I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Few looks like he might be there, Scott Drew.
No, but I mean, one day he's going to retire.
No, yeah,
I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like, so, like Craig said, it's not, 20 years from now. Is it? If Mark Few is still coaching there 20 years from now, that'd be a little bit. I mean, that would maybe be the length of which the maximum length I think he would. Because I mean, he's not young, right? I mean, he's not old, but like, it's not like he's 41.
He's 60 years old.
He's 60 years old. So if he's going to coach till he's 80, that's like Krzyzewski almost did. Yeah. So like 20 years from now, when Mark Few leaves, hopefully or not before, does Gonzaga fall off because they don't hire someone that can match that success?
We could say that about anybody.
It's true, but
in some cases, even at schools who are part of the elite.
That's what I'm saying. It's definitely a now move.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
fine. But if you're sitting here looking at this as like some long-term investment, like I said, then yeah, it's not necessarily one that you're like, yeah, let's invite them on a 20-year basis, because he could retire in 2 years and they could become irrelevant. And I know that they've got a long, lengthy history, but nothing's guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed. So, I think in the immediate future, if you're trying to make this like the International Basketball Conference or the National Basketball Conference and have as much reach as possible, then it makes a lot of sense. But I would do it on probably a pretty short. I mean, look, and their next contract's probably going to be short term anyway. So, I mean, if you want to just do it for this next go round and do it up to 20, 30, whatever, then that would make sense and potentially be beneficial for you. But it's an interesting idea. I mean, I appreciate the outside the box thinking, and I'm not opposed to it at all. But yeah, definitely your short term interest would be raised, and I don't know how it would look long term.
We'll ask when we get him again, and we will. Brett Yormark right now, again, meetings earlier this week. There was travel before the meetings because we reached out to the Big 12 about what that does bring to the table, and what is that like step one of maybe 4 others. A couple of notes.